The world of reality television was rocked when investigators began the daunting task of processing the immense collection of artifacts left behind in what many now refer to as the Pawn Stars estate. This followed the shocking bankruptcy filing of the Gold and Silver Pawn Shops corporate entity. The once beloved Las Vegas institution, made famous by the History Channel's wildly popular show Pawn Stars, had not only drawn tourists from across the globe, but had become a symbol of Americana, a blend of pop culture, historical education, and entrepreneurial success. At the heart of this crumbling empire stood Rick Harrison, the charismatic frontman of the show, now burdened with legal woes, the tragic loss of his son, and a bitter family dispute threatening to undo everything he and his late father had built. What began as a routine financial audit quickly spiraled into a complex and deeply troubling investigation. Authorities, initially called in to evaluate the shop's assets due to cash flow concerns, uncovered a web of questionable artifacts, incomplete documentation, and problematic provenance, some of which pointed to potentially illegal acquisitions, including stolen goods and items possibly smuggled from protected historical sites or countries with strict antiquities export laws. The collection, amassed over decades, included thousands of items, many of which predated the launch of the television series, and were acquired during a time when record-keeping may not have met modern standards. Natalie Rodriguez, a former FBI art crime specialist, explained the magnitude of the task. Evaluating the legitimacy of these acquisitions would require immense time, expertise, and resources. Particularly concerning were Civil War-era relics whose documentation raised alarms and Native American artifacts that might fall under federal repatriation laws. The investigation has cast a long shadow over the shop and its former stars, reviving old controversies and unearthing painful family truths. Adding to the weight of this unfolding drama is the personal devastation that Rick Harrison continues to endure. In January 2025, Rick's son Adam Harrison, aged just 39, died of a drug overdose, a tragedy that sent ripples through the tight-knit Las Vegas community and fans of the show alike. Adam, who largely avoided the spotlight and did not appear on Pawn Stars, remained close to his family. His sudden death devastated Rick, already struggling with the slow decline of the family business. "It's a nightmare that keeps getting worse," shared a family friend, who noted that the mounting legal troubles combined with the loss of a child had emotionally crippled Rick. In the wake of Adam's death, Rick issued a heartfelt statement expressing his eternal love for his son, and soon began speaking publicly about the opioid epidemic, using his platform to raise awareness about the crisis claiming thousands of American lives. But even as he mourned, the world of Pawn Stars unraveled further, and scrutiny from media and investigators only intensified, leaving little space for the family to grieve in peace. Meanwhile, financial auditors continued digging through the corporate records, uncovering not only questionable artifacts, but also irregularities in the company's financial dealings. These issues extended beyond the pawn shop to include the many ventures spawned from the show's success, from Rick's Rollin' Smoke Barbecue and Tavern to Corey's investment in the Viper Room Las Vegas and assorted merchandising deals. A complex web of entities emerged, raising questions about fund commingling and questionable expense allocations. For Corey Big Hoss Harrison, who had worked in the pawn shop since his teenage years and was seen as Rick's successor, this development marked a serious threat to his future. Episodes of Pawn Stars had charted his progression from a reckless youth to savvy businessman, and now the enterprise he was meant to inherit teetered on the brink. Austin Chumlee Russell, the affable and often comic relief on Pawn Stars, also found himself back in the spotlight, though not in a manner he welcomed. Chumlee had already faced legal troubles in 2016 when a police investigation into unrelated allegations uncovered illegal weapons and drugs in his home. While he was never charged with the initial accusations, he pled guilty to felony weapons possession and a gross misdemeanor for drugs, serving 3 years probation. Since then, Russell had taken major steps to rebuild his life, losing a significant amount of weight, opening a candy shop near the pawn store, and staying out of trouble. His attorney, Martin Cohen, was quick to clarify that Chumlee had no purchasing authority during the time the questionable items were acquired, and that he was fully cooperating with investigators. Friends close to Chumlee echoed the sentiment, insisting that dragging his name into this mess was unfair given how far he'd come in reclaiming his life and reputation. Despite that, his association with the Harrison family and the shop kept him tethered to the investigation, serving as a painful reminder of the cost of reality fame. For Rick Harrison, who had long prided himself on the integrity and educational value of his business, the unfolding scandal has called into question the very foundation of his public persona. Rick frequently spoke on the show about how his father, Richard the Old Man Harrison, instilled in him a deep respect for historical knowledge, authentication, and responsible trading. The elder Harrison, who passed away in 2018 after battling Parkinson's disease, was widely regarded as a tough but fair patriarch who helped launch the pawn shop with Rick in 1989. He was a guiding presence both in the business and on the show, where fans grew fond of his dry wit and stern demeanor. His absence is now keenly felt as the legacy he left behind is being dissected under a legal microscope. The History Channel, which helped catapult the family into stardom through over 600 episodes of Pawn Stars, issued a brief statement acknowledging the investigation but emphasizing that the network had no involvement in the shop's daily operations. While the show remains off-air pending the investigation's outcome, its legacy hangs precariously in the balance. Viewers who once tuned in for the educational breakdowns of vintage firearms, rare coins, and obscure memorabilia now find themselves questioning the authenticity of those very segments. Miranda Jensen, a noted television critic, pointed out the irony that Rick, long celebrated for his ability to spot fakes and demand proper documentation, could now be at the center of a scandal involving improperly acquired artifacts. "It's a credibility issue," she remarked. "If he didn't catch these problems, or worse, if he overlooked them, that challenges the entire premise of the show." Some of the most serious allegations involve antiquities believed to originate from countries with strict cultural property laws, regions like Egypt, Greece, and parts of the Middle East. International laws surrounding the sale and export of such items have become increasingly rigorous, with countries now aggressively pursuing the return of cultural heritage items taken under dubious circumstances. Dr. Elias Kastner, an archaeologist specializing in repatriation, explained that the antiquities market is fraught with complications and that without rigorous research, it's easy for even experienced collectors to unwittingly acquire looted or illegally exported items. For a business built on historical artifacts and public trust, the standard for due diligence would naturally be extremely high. This aspect of the investigation has prompted fans to revisit past episodes of Pawn Stars, re-evaluating segments where Rick and his team called in experts to assess the legitimacy of items. Those moments, once seen as evidence of the shop's ethical standards, now carry an air of suspicion. Financially, the situation is equally dire. Though Gold and Silver Pawn once attracted long lines of tourists eager for a glimpse of the stars and the memorabilia featured on television, the past few years have seen a sharp decline. Revenue from the show dropped as viewership waned, and merchandise sales no longer reached their former highs. According to celebrity wealth manager Thomas Keegan, the pattern is all too familiar. Reality television fame is fleeting. He said, "The smart ones use their moment in the spotlight to invest and diversify. The Harrisons did expand, but sustaining that kind of business model after the celebrity glow fades is tough." Compounding these issues is the tangled web of the Harrison family's estates. When Richard Harrison died in 2018, it was revealed that he had cut one of his sons out of his will the year before, leaving Rick and Joseph as the primary beneficiaries. The structure of ownership between family members, estates, and business entities now poses a significant challenge for investigators attempting to determine who bears responsibility for the shop's financial and legal troubles. For Rick, the patriarch of the modern-day pawn empire, the weight of these complexities is taking a toll. Sources close to the family describe a man desperately trying to hold together the fragments of his once thriving legacy while cooperating fully with investigators and shielding his loved ones from further fallout. The investigation, while ongoing, has already upended public perception of the Harrison family, casting a somber light on what was once one of television's most beloved success stories. Meanwhile, the shop remains open, though the mood inside has drastically shifted. What was once a bustling hive of tourists and curiosity seekers has quieted, the bright lights of fame giving way to uncertainty and anxiety. Corey continues to work at the shop, doing his best to support his father, while processing the grief of his brother's death and the potential collapse of their family's livelihood. Despite the heavy burden, he has remained visible and cooperative, working with investigators and trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But the weight of the investigation looms large, and the outcome remains uncertain. Whether or not formal charges are ultimately filed, the case of the Pawn Stars estate has become a cautionary tale about the perils of sudden fame, unchecked growth, and the complex legal landscape surrounding historical artifacts. For Rick, Corey, and Chumlee, the road ahead will not be easy as they face not only the judgment of the law, but of the millions who once welcomed them into their living rooms. As the investigation continues and new details emerge, the story of Pawn Stars may yet take further dramatic turns. But the dream that began in a small Las Vegas pawn shop in 1989, with a father and son chasing the American dream, will never be quite the same again. Despite the storm of legal trouble and personal tragedy, there remains a quiet resilience within the remaining members of the Harrison family. Rick, while visibly aged by the ordeal, has reportedly been spending long hours both at the shop and behind the scenes with his legal team, determined to defend what remains of his family's reputation. Those closest to him describe a man oscillating between grief and determination, a father still mourning his son's death, yet unwilling to let the family legacy dissolve under the weight of scandal. He has refused to speak to most media outlets, choosing instead to focus on internal matters. But in one rare appearance outside the pawn shop, Rick briefly acknowledged the gravity of the situation. "We're cooperating with everything," he said, voice hoarse. "This business meant everything to my dad, and I won't let it go down without a fight." While public support has waned due to the allegations, a loyal base of fans continues to express hope that Rick and his family can clear their name, attributing much of the current mess to poor management or third-party involvement rather than direct malice or deceit. Yet the legal apparatus continues to churn, and with each passing week, more troubling details emerge. The sheer number of undocumented or improperly cataloged items, some stored in private, off-site vaults, raises troubling questions about the breadth of oversight during the show's peak. Investigators are not just looking at what was bought and sold, but who knew what and when. Forensic accountants have been brought in to comb through years of transactions, attempting to piece together a timeline that may indicate whether these irregularities were due to negligence or intentional wrongdoing. One theory under consideration is that as Pawn Stars grew into a global brand, the day-to-day operations of the pawn shop took a back seat to the demands of television production. With deals happening quickly, often under the spotlight of the cameras, proper vetting may have been bypassed in favor of content creation. That pressure to entertain may have inadvertently opened the door for fake documents, misrepresented items, or deals that were not as clean as they appeared on screen. Former employees and consultants familiar with the production process are now being interviewed, some under subpoena, in hopes of identifying breakdowns in procedure or red flags that went unnoticed. Complicating matters further is the blurred line between entertainment and actual business. When the show aired a transaction, it wasn't always reflective of what occurred behind the scenes. Many items never changed hands on camera. Others were brought in by producers and staged for educational purposes. Though disclaimers noted this at times, the general audience was often unaware of the extent to which entertainment shaped the business. Now, in court filings, attorneys are arguing over which transactions were real in a legal sense and which were scripted or performed purely for television. As federal agents, attorneys, and antiquities experts continue to assess the shop's assets, a separate but equally consequential drama is playing out within the Harrison family itself. Internal documents reveal mounting tension between Rick and other family members over the management of various trust funds and estate-related properties. There are reports of private mediation sessions and even speculation that a second legal battle over the late Old Man Harrisons may be on the horizon. Allegations have surfaced that certain assets, including classic cars and vintage firearms once displayed proudly on the show, were quietly moved to private storage under unclear ownership structures, an action that has only fueled the suspicion surrounding the family's business dealings. Former insiders suggest that following the elder Harrisons' passing in 2018, fractures began to form among surviving members, made worse by the stress of managing a media empire and brick-and-mortar business simultaneously. Corey Harrison has largely avoided the public infighting, but is rumored to be in a difficult position, caught between loyalty to his father and the desire to protect his own financial future. Those close to him say he has been seeking independent legal counsel and is considering stepping away from the business entirely once the investigation concludes. Meanwhile, the Las Vegas community, which once embraced the gold and silver pawn shop as a cultural landmark, now views it with cautious curiosity. Tourist foot traffic has decreased, and longtime locals have expressed sadness over what the shop has become. "It used to be a point of pride," said Gina Montreux, a resident of the area for over 2 decades. "Now it feels like a museum of what used to be, except even the artifacts might be fake." Local authorities are keeping a close eye on the investigation, particularly as more potentially stolen items are identified. Some may need to be returned to their countries of origin or rightful owners, setting up a legal domino effect that could last for years. Museums and auction houses that previously partnered with the shop are now distancing themselves, with some issuing statements disavowing any connection to the current legal mess. The ripple effect is enormous. Deals with History Channel's international affiliates have been frozen, merchandise contracts are being reevaluated, and licensing agreements for Pawn Stars reruns are under scrutiny due to clauses tied to reputational risk. Despite the unfolding chaos, some fans still make pilgrimages to the pawn shop, hoping for a glimpse of the stars or a photo beside the now fading mural of Rick and his father. For these visitors, the shop still represents something meaningful, a quirky piece of television history, a throwback to a time when reality shows hadn't yet been tarnished by controversy. But for Rick Harrison, the reality behind the show has become a nightmare far more dramatic than anything the History Channel could script. He's fighting battles on multiple fronts, against regulators, auditors, creditors, and perhaps most painfully, within his own heart. The legacy he hoped to pass down now lies buried beneath layers of suspicion, grief, and public skepticism. The question remains, can the empire be salvaged?